people wonder, like, why are you torturing animals?
So it's kind of like being a mad scientist.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sid, and in today's video I will be talking about Jay Brewer, most commonly known as Prehistoric Pets and the Reptile Zoo on social media. And this will be the second video I've made on Jay. The last video I made on him outlined a host of issues with his pet store and zoo, like the way that he cuts open his snake eggs, his oversized python Twinkie, his power feeding of reptiles, and him deliberately agitating his animals. But of course, there is actually a lot more. But first, I just want to get into today's sponsor, Aura. I'm sure everybody has received spam emails and robocalls and wondered how they got your phone number or your email address to begin with. They got it because data brokers are making fortunes selling your private information. Where Aura steps in is that they can identify the data brokers, exposing your info, and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your information if you ask them to, but of course they don't make it easy. So Aura handles all of the back and forth for you. And apps like Aura have never been more important when there are massive data breaches happening all of the time, like the National Public Data Breach, which saw over 2.9 billion people's critical personal information compromised. And it's not just those sorts of things that Aura helps with, they do so much more to protect you and your family from the online threats that you can't see. They have one easy to set up app that has a bunch of things included, like parental controls, antivirus, a VPN, and so much more. It's all in the one place at one affordable price. So you can either let people continue to profit off and exploit your private information, or you can go to aura.com/sid to start your 2-week free trial, also linked at the top of the description box. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Aura for sponsoring this video. It is a huge help to me and the channel, and helps me to be able to continue to make this sort of content where I raise awareness and help animals. Anyways, back to the video. To start off with, I want to talk about what Jay does away from his pet store and zoo. Probably not surprisingly, but Jay spends time at some zoos that are pretty cruel to their animals. In Dubai, there are a few zoos that celebrities and influencers get invited to. One of those zoos is called the Fame Park Zoo, that is only open to the wealthy and the famous. And Jay is one of the people invited to this zoo. Whoever gets to go there gets to interact with baby big cats that have been taken away from their mothers, feed a host of exotic animals, and play tug-of-war with a liger. Another zoo in Dubai that Jay has been invited to is the Rock Zoo, and it's pretty much the same gist as the Fame Park Zoo. Animals are chained up all over the place, and the cages that they are kept in are pretty crappy. Not only does he support these kinds of places, but he also sells reptiles to them. A prince in Dubai actually wanted to purchase his record-breaking python Twinkie, who has since passed away.
Meanwhile, who would know, but the Prince of Dubai had actually even contacted us, and we went over to Dubai, and he wanted to buy her, but I didn't really want to sell her, so I put a ridiculous price on her. We were offered a lot of money.
And after Twinkie passed away, he continued to power feed another reticulated python, who ended up holding the world record for the largest reticulated python. And while he decided not to sell Twinkie, he did decide to sell that python to the National Aquarium over there.
I sold the world's largest reticulated python to Abu Dhabi.
While there's no shortage of issues at the National Aquarium, it's definitely a lot better than all of the other privately owned zoos that Jay loves to support in the UAE. Probably worst of all is another privately owned zoo that Jay is far more involved in, and that is the zoo known as the Zoo Wildlife Park Al Quain, also known as just Zoo Park. They have big cats chained up for photo ops in open areas. There's also an orangutan there that is allowed to free range and interact with the visitors against its will. And while that seems like it is far better than being stuck in a cage, it is still incredibly stressful for the animal.
Where she want to take me?
She's scared. I'll take.
Oh, she's scared?
And also potentially dangerous for the visitors, because a big part of this zoo is it allowing visitors to be hands-on with the animals. And for some reason, Jay has become somewhat of a spokesperson for this zoo.
Joining us in the studio is an adventurer and animal lover, Jay Brewer.
Luckily, when I'm out here, I get to visit a lot of fun people, and Sheikh Ahmed
bin Nasser al
right.
Yes.
So so anyway, he's got the Park Zoo, and this is one of the incredible little creatures. He's got a Nile crocodile. So this is an iguana, and this actually at the zoo, this gets to play with all the guests, and so does the umbrella cockatoo. And so they're absolutely, some of the. I've always been a hands-on person, and so one thing I like over there at Park Zoo is that they take time to let the kids learn, touch. Booba, is
not comfortable, right?
And she's the star of the real show. I'm just really along for the ride. She's an adventurer. Here, maybe somebody. But where are we going?
And Jay loves to talk about the experiences that he has in that country with the animals and the royalty there.
Amazing places I've been invited to in Dubai. Same thing, Dubai. Hey, just show up. We got everything. You can't just buy your way into where I get to go. And I just think to myself, if that ain't living the dream, I don't know what is. People recognize me when I went to Dubai. You're that guy. Now I go into royal families, princes, like houses and private zoo and seeing animals. I mean, it's crazy. It's like the contrast is surreal. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, literally some of the places I go, only rich, famous movie stars get to go. It's like closed doors. Some of them, they don't care if you're rich or famous, you don't go. And I end up there. Both the most expensive snakes went to Dubai.
Smuggled, yeah.
Flexing these experiences is not something that someone who claims to love animals would do, because it's not just the animals that are chained up for photo ops that have a miserable existence. All of the animals at Zoo Park are suffering. Many complaints have been made online about the conditions that these animals are housed in. Most of them live in small, barren spaces. So many animals also aren't getting their nutritional or dietary needs met. There is a plethora of animals that are incredibly skinny. For anyone who genuinely cares about animals, this would be the last place that they would go to, support, and promote. Even though Jay claims to love animals, it is not surprising that he gets invited to these places and then actually goes. In many ways, his zoo is similar to these ones in the UAE. Jay has a catchphrase where he says that he's living the dream. Without a doubt, he is living his dream. But one thing's for sure, his animals certainly are not. The vast majority of Jay's snakes and pythons spend their entire lives in small tubs or small cages. And this isn't anything that Jay has tried to hide by any means.
So this side is ball pythons. This side are all retics.
Many reptile breeders who are also content creators happily share that side of things without any shame. But it is something that is looked down upon by other members of the reptile community.
But one of the biggest issues with it is A, you're dealing with lots of animals that are being overproduced, and B, we were left with these rack systems where animals are kept on top of each other in order to maximize space and efficiency.
Yeah. There's serious power from day one if you treat them in a humane way to begin with. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean keeping ball pythons at little pull-out boxes and giant retics and vision cages and all this other nonsense. It's really cruel and inhumane. All the puppy mill producing that's going on now, it's the same as puppy mills, except we're using reptiles instead of puppies.
Now, this practice has been very bad for the hobby. For anybody who's looking at reptile keeping from an external point of view, keeping animals in large rack systems and overproducing in order to try to find a cool color pattern is not a good look.
And while they may make it seem as though they only live in these small conditions for the breeding purposes. That is far from the case for Jay's reptiles. A former worker of Jay's who reached out to me emphasized many times that the pythons spend their entire lives in these tubs. And like I said, Jay has not tried to hide the way that he houses these animals, but this former worker did send me a bunch of videos of all of the tubs behind the scenes of the zoo. There's another reptile content creator called Nick the Wrangler who collaborates with Jay for content and also does some work for him as well. This former worker said that Nick gave Jay a snake 7 years ago, and Nick showed this former worker the snake, and it was so messed up it couldn't even move correctly. It was just rolling over on itself. He said that snake has been in that same tub when he gave it to Jay 7 years ago. Another animal kept in small conditions there is an American alligator named Davy. He is around 14 years old and he is tiny. According to this blog post, Jay got Davy in early 2012, and under a year before that, Jay got his alligators Gomer and Darth, who are now massive. Darth was 3 and Gomer was 2 when Jay got his hands on them, but that's still only 2 to 3 years age difference, and Gomer and Darth are massive in comparison to Davy, when Davy should be almost the same size as them.
Gomer and Darth over here. Hi, dudes! Look, it's like a little miniature you.
That is not how Davy should look as a 14-year-old gator, and Jay definitely knows that he stunted Davy's growth. He rescued another small gator that he didn't really know how old it was, but he guessed that it would be around the 15-year-old mark.
Probably been 15, oh, isn't that cute? Probably 15 years old, which is crazy for it to be that small. Juliet's been feeding it up.
They know that that is not how a gator should look at that age, and Davy has been prevented from growing as large as Darth and Gomer because he is kept in a very small cage. It has a tiny swimming pool and not much area for him to move around in. And they put that rescue gator in the same size cage that Davy is in, which is what is restricting Davy from growing, and will only continue to restrict this rescue gator's growth. Even though Jay has bigger cages at his zoo and has had bigger cages become available, he continues to keep Davy in that small cage. So many gators have arrived after Davy, but we're getting into bigger cages before he ever was.
So, she is gonna get a huge, big enclosure that she'll get to grow into. It'll almost be a little bit, make her look so tiny again. All right, this is TikTok. We're gonna get this guy a bigger enclosure. He had a little bit smaller one, but...
Which not only doesn't seem fair, but it doesn't really make much sense. But one thing that might make them keeping Davy stunted make sense is that they use him for a lot of presentations and parties.
This guy's gotta go do a presentation. He's gonna go out to a school today. He goes out and does educational events with us. How fun is it? This big old guy, he's one of our party animals. He goes out and does presentations, gosh, probably like 3 times a week, 4 times a week.
And they've also talked about why Davy is the best kind of gator for those sorts of things.
And because he goes out and does educational experiences, he's super sweet and like pretty mellow. So we're trying to work with him super often.
He is one of the tamest alligators we have because he loves going out, doing his events, teaching people about American alligators.
I really hope they're not deliberately stunting Davy because they need a nice small gator to do events. If they are, that is incredibly cruel.
The comparison I make is just like, imagine if you were raising a human baby, and instead of me being, so when I was like 15, I was already over 6 feet tall. So I got the genes to be tall, but imagine that same person, except I'm 3 feet tall now because I was improperly taken care of. But that's fine. That's what happens with these crocodilians. They're kept as pets, and you have animals that should be literally triple, quadruple their size at that age, and they're so stunted by improper captive care. Imagine that with humans.
But even if there is no particular reason why they are keeping Davy stunted, it's still incredibly cruel. No gator should live the way that Davy is living. And if that's the way they're going to house gators, they should not be rescuing them. I was also contacted by somebody who just visited Jay's zoo, and they were also pretty concerned with the sizing of the cages. A cage for a crocodile monitor was so small that it spent the hour that they were there just pacing back and forth and banging its head on the glass. It was doing it so frequently that it injured itself and splattered blood across the glass. This visitor was also concerned for the animals in the main alligator cage. That cage is the one that consists of the two big alligators, Darth and Goma, and an alligator snapping turtle. Not only did it appear like the alligators didn't have enough room for themselves, but the snapping turtle definitely did not. The visitor observed it staying jammed between two rocks with nowhere for it to go but up. It's hard to believe at different points in time that Jay had more alligator snapping turtles and common snapping turtles in there with the alligators, because while they are incredibly hardy animals, they do not get a peaceful coexistence with the alligators.
The alligators mess with them sometime, and I always watch them, and it's kind of like watching two giants, you know, prehistoric animals living together.
For several years, there was one main alligator snapping turtle in with the two alligators, and that was a turtle named Big Lou.
Real Big Lou! Woo-hoo! Big Lou, just for an update, is probably over 100 years old.
But then Lou disappeared. I can't pinpoint exactly when he vanished, but based on the last time he was seen on Jay's socials, it was more than likely in the second half of 2022. Then Jay got another alligator snapping turtle for that tank. There was no formal introduction for it and no name that I know of, but Jay did post a handful of videos of it online, and someone replied to one of those videos on TikTok saying that the turtle didn't look okay. And they were right, that turtle was not okay. It died 1.5 years after Jay had it. But it wasn't really his fault because it was sold to him with a fishing hook in its body. And apparently he did attempt to treat it.
The last one I kind of got cheated, to be honest, because it had a big giant fish hook in it and it ended up causing complications over a 1.5 year period. I lost it. And when I lost it, I was devastated. We did everything we could. We got the hook out of it that came out of its rear that big. I don't know. I think the guy just lied to me. The guy got it from. You know, it's been a 1.5 years later. It came out 1 year later. I don't know what it did to the inside.
When it died, he promptly replaced it. He had a new massive turtle shipped to him. He had some difficulty getting it out of the box it was shipped to him in, and in the process, it filled its mouth with styrofoam. But what was probably more dangerous was the way that Jay dumped him in the water. At the end of that video, he finds out that turtle's name is Big Ed.
Big Ed. So his name is Big Ed, guys.
Then 2 weeks later, he uploaded another video of Big Ed. But even though it was uploaded 2 weeks later, I'm pretty sure it was actually filmed the same day that the turtle arrived, or the very next day. There is still styrofoam all over the floor and in the tank from the packaging that Big Ed came in. But even though he just found out the name of Big Ed, he calls him Big Lou instead.
And they fit in because they live in the same area. Yeah, Big Lou. Anyway, Big Lou is in his enclosure.
Which was the name of the original alligator snapping turtle that lived in that tank with the alligators. At first I thought that was the original Big Lou he had in that video, but that definitely isn't Big Lou.
And you can always tell this one because you got that right there in the shell on the top. Yep. Looks like a bullet hole.
Yeah, it really
does.
You know what's
funny? I bet it is.
It probably is.
I'd almost put any amount of money that's a bullet hole. I ought to have an x-ray to find out. There's a bullet in there.
So that is how you can identify who Big Lou is, and this turtle does not have that bullet hole. And he looks pretty much identical to the turtle that he unpackaged Big Ed. It's kind of hard to tell if he is trying to pass off this new snapping turtle as his original snapping turtle, Big Lou, that disappeared without a trace. I will say that he has connected with the San Antonio Aquarium many times. He actually traded some animals with them for a couple of dwarf caiman crocodiles.
So these came from San Antonio Aquarium. I'm so excited. They got such awesome animals. First time I went there like a year and a half ago, I fell in love with these, and then they needed something cool.
And the San Antonio Aquarium was actually a creation of the Covino family, which if you've seen my Sequest videos, you will know who they are. They own a host of shoddy aquariums, and the San Antonio Aquarium is currently in Christi, Covino's name, because her husband, Ammon Covino, was jailed for animal trafficking, and he wasn't allowed to be involved in the animal industry for a period of time, so the aquarium was put in her name to circumvent the law. And one thing that the Covinos do is that when an animal dies, they replace it and name it the exact same thing.
Animals do die, and they're replaceable in just a few minutes because they can just get a new one and name it the same thing.
But animals that Jay doesn't try and pass off as former animals that he's had are his alligators. When Jay added a zoo to his pet store in 2009, it opened up the possibility to have different kinds of animals. Alligators are illegal to own in California, where Jay is based, but as a zoo, he would be allowed to keep them. So as soon as the reptile zoo was formed, he got to work on an alligator cage.
So this over here is going to be an alligator pond. That'll be water and glass, and it'll be really nice.
It wasn't until almost 2 years later that it was complete. In mid-2011, before the cage was complete, he got his hands on two 2-year-old alligators, which he named Gomer and Pile. They stayed in a small cage that you would typically see a python or a lizard stay in. Then a couple of months later, in August 2011, he got another alligator, and that time it was a 3-year-old named Darth. Darth lived in a side tank adjacent to the bigger tank that was planned for alligators. Monitor lizards lived on the other bigger side, while Gomer and Pile lived in the smaller cage still. But in 2012, he did put all 3 gators together in that bigger cage. And that is where those 3 gators lived for several years. The gator named Pile turned out to be a girl as well.
Okay, here. We'll get the little girl one. You want it?
She did end up disappearing, and I couldn't find out what happened to her, but ever since then it has just been Gomer and Darth and the snapping turtles in that cage. And it wasn't long before Gomer started presenting some issues. He had difficulties opening his mouth the full way.
Gomer has a mouth issue. He's got to push against something a little bit because his jaws never work. Gomer actually has a mouth problem, and his mouth has never worked really well.
Gomer has always had really bad. He's never been able to open his mouth more than like this much.
And this is a clear sign of metabolic bone disease. The alligator expert and rescuer, Chris Gillette, has talked extensively about the signs of MBD.
So this is metabolic bone disease, MBD, and it's caused, again, from improper captive care. This gator can't even bite me. Its mouth only opens up this big. Face had really bad metabolic bone disease. Her mouth only opened up about this much. Horrible metabolic bone disease, but she couldn't even eat on her own because her mouth doesn't open up enough.
Another sign of MBD is their teeth sticking outward instead of straight down or straight up.
On a normal wild alligator, you should not, when the alligator's mouth is closed, you should not be able to see any of the bottom teeth protruding. Now, we do catch some wild alligators that do have a couple weird, like maybe he needed braces kind of thing. So that does happen, but the point is that for the vast majority, 90-something% of all wild alligators, if his mouth is closed, you cannot see any of the bottom row of teeth because the bottom row fit in the sockets in the upper jaw, right? Now, on these captive alligators, these pet alligators, you will see all the time, almost all of them, you're going to see either 5 or more or all of the bottom row of teeth going like this instead of like this, right? And when you actually look at the skull of one that's passed away, you'll see that the tooth root, the jaw bone itself is horrifically deformed, where instead of this, Imagine your teeth going out like this. Imagine closing your mouth and your teeth don't touch. Your gums hit, but your teeth don't because they're sticking out so far like this. That is how almost all these alligators look.
Gomer's bottom teeth especially stick straight out, which can be better seen in footage from a few years ago. Nowadays, Gomer seems to have only a couple of teeth on the bottom jaw, which are hard to see, but when you can spot them, they're pointed outward. And Jay said that these gators are rescues.
They were literally illegally taken from Florida, taken to California against the law, and had to be rehomed or put under or whatever they have to do because they can't put them back in the wild. I came in the middle of that and they gave me permits and, ooh, yeah, you guys are ready, huh? So, that's how they ended up here.
For the longest time, he never referred to his gators as rescues. It was never mentioned on the zoo's blog post introducing the gators they had. He spent 2 years building a cage especially for gators, and then he got gators. It seemed as simple as that, but then all of a sudden, they were rescues.
This is actually Gomer, and Gomer, come on Gomer, I'm gonna show everybody. Gomer is a rescue, so his teeth aren't perfect, but he's pretty darn cool.
Both of them are actually rescues.
So they're rescue gator. He's a rescue, being a rescue gator.
We got him from, he was a confiscation. No, he wasn't. That's his actual lie. That's a literal lie. I lied to your face. Okay, so we got him at Baldwin Park. So someone actually just left him at a doorstep at a dog pound. Thankfully, they called us.
I do believe that some of his gators are rescues, but it is very convenient that as soon as they start presenting some issues, then all of a sudden they're a rescue, which is what their issues can be blamed on. And the Covinos, the SeaQuest aquarium people who I mentioned earlier, who Jay is familiar with, also tend to call a lot of their animals rescues when they never were.
Employees had no idea where animals came from.
Baby animals coming onto site, and we'd question, like, where are these babies coming from?
But the story is that they're rescued, and we're working on rehabilitating them and rehoming them.
So I can't help but be skeptical when that is the sort of thing that these people do. And a bunch of Jay's other gators are displaying varying levels of metabolic bone disease, but hopefully any more he gets, he can raise them healthily because he has no intention of stopping.
But look, we actually got a new one. I got a new toy! We got another American alligator.
He even plans on breeding alligators at some point.
So this is my investment into my future dream. Because like I breed snakes, it would be kind of fun to breed alligators. I can't do it in California because it's an invasive species. So this is the future to the next zoo, maybe outside of California, huh?
He's considered starting a zoo in Las Vegas and even toyed with the idea of starting one in Dubai or Saudi Arabia.
And who knows, there may be another zoo by next year.
Who knows? Where would you put it if you wanted it?
Las Vegas, maybe. I don't know, that just might be where it happens.
Wow.
I've always toyed with Dubai or Saudi Arabia.
You like going over there.
I have
It's the gold, huh?
amazing people that I know in Dubai and Saudi Arabia.
On top of all of that, no matter what, every captive alligator, whether it be someone's pet or in a zoo, will have some kind of issue.
All alligators born in captivity, raised in captivity, have some sort of metabolic bone disease. Even in cases where the animal's not neglected, even when the alligator has the best care, for example, raising them from hatchlings in Florida and feeding them a varied diet of crustaceans and crock chow and chicken and bones and whole prey, they still get metabolic bone disease, even if it's just slight.
Even at AZA facilities with literally the best captive care, the most up-to-date current knowledge on captive care for crocodilians, you will see animals exhibiting metabolic bone disease.
Even in the best zoo facilities, those crocodilians still exhibit metabolic bone disease. I see it myself all the time when I go to visit other facilities. So even in the best captive care, they're still exhibiting MBD.
Captive elephants have a host of joint and foot problems. 70% of male gorillas in captivity have heart disease, and captive alligators are destined to have some level of metabolic bone disease. Some animals just aren't able to be held captive without having a legion of health issues. So Jay wants to keep and breed these animals even though the end result will never be a happy, healthy animal. He also says that he likes to keep them for educational purposes, but there's nothing educational about taunting them, owning albino alligators that can't even exist in the wild, or wanting to breed them for different colors. He has alligators for money. Just like him breeding snakes, it's for money. So many that you really have to wonder what happens to all of them, because surely he isn't selling that many.
You can get 4 in a row to be exactly what you're looking for, or you can get 4 without ever seeing what you want. I usually know my odds.
The more rare the color pattern, the higher the numbers can go.
Before you know it, you have to have 140. I'm hunting for the 1 in 140. It's going to take 140 eggs just to get one of them. While I get there, there's going to be all different kinds of beautiful snakes on the...
A former worker sent me a video of a bunch of reptiles in a freezer at Jay's zoo. And I know most zoos and aquariums will hold onto any dead animals in a freezer or fridge until a necropsy is performed or any necessary paperwork is filled out, and then once that is complete, they will sometimes feed the dead animals to other animals. So I asked this former worker if Jay had these reptiles in the freezer to feed them to other animals, and this worker said that nothing at the zoo would eat turtles or bearded dragons, which is what can be seen in the freezer. This former worker actually has no idea why Jay holds the dead animals in the freezers. All this person knows is how they get there in the first place. I have no reason not to believe this person, but going ahead, I will refer to everything as alleged because these are some pretty big claims. This worker told me that Jay allegedly puts animals in the freezers as a way to put them down. This person said that when they were working there, they allegedly helped dismantle a wooden snake rack that was roach infested with hundreds of deformed snakes in it, and they were frozen alive as a way to get rid of them. He said they allegedly bagged up 30 snakes for them to freeze just that day. This worker also told me that Jay used to be an idol to them, but now they see him as nothing but evil. But yeah, that is pretty much everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and let's take a moment of silence for all of the animals that have suffered in Jay's care. And I will see you in my next video.